Radio Detox back with another amazing guest. This guy, you probably know him, and we all love him. It's Trey Musgrave, president of the Bitcoin District Initiative. Welcome to Radio Detox.
Thank you, Heather, for having me.
We have a lot to talk about today, but I want to start with kind of who you are and what's your Bitcoin story and your detox off of fiat story.
My name is Trey. I live here in DC. I grew up in Alabama, went to the University of Alabama, and then, got a job with the federal government, and that took me, to a lot of cool places. I spent some time overseas, lived in Germany for a few years, and that's where my sort of Bitcoin journey started. I had a friend out there who was like more on the day trader, a day trader type. And he's a good friend of mine. And he really wanted me to buy some, I think it was Ripple or XRP or something at the time. He was badgering me about it. So I said, fine, how do I do it? And then he sent me this long list of instructions on how to buy it. But it wasn't super easy. This was 2018. It wasn't super easy. So I had to sign up for Coinbase. He wanted me to buy Ethereum, and then I had to withdraw it and then swap it for something. And it was just a lot.
Super complicated.
It was super complicated. But I signed up for Coinbase and bought Ethereum, just a couple $100. It wasn't much. And then just forgot about it, right? I'm living in Germany. I'm traveling all over the place, having a good time. And then, and then just forgot about it. And then 2020 came around. I moved back to the States. Move into a new apartment here near DC. And then I hear something on the news. There was a big run up in 2020, 2021. And then I remembered I had bought some Ethereum, logged back into my Coinbase and saw that $200 or $300 turned into $3,000. So that kind of got me thinking about, what is this thing? And then, of course, lockdown during COVID. I eventually, after a lot of shitcoining later, I ended up on the What is Money podcast by Breedlove, and that just kind of changed the game. And then it just clarified everything for me. I had started to get
when that came out
at that point. Yeah, it was great. It just, things started to click then. And ever since then, I've been kind of Bitcoin only.
I think the pandemic got a lot of us into Bitcoin. For me, it was looking for the escape hatch. And I think the lockdown of being stuck at home, whether you're just in your house and maybe you're alone or maybe you're not, and you're just looking for ways to fill time. A lot of us went, I can look deeper into this Bitcoin thing. So you so bravely admit to the shitcoining past, which is, I think, very good, because I think there are a lot of people in this space that don't want to admit to that. And I think that, I think we're at a point in time where it's okay to admit it. And probably a lot of people are out there looking for that information and wondering, do I get into XRP or, whatever the hell else is out there right now? I have a friend just told me, she goes, I'm all in on XRP. And I'm like, hey, this isn't financial advice, but you gotta look into Bitcoin, especially, woman to woman. I'm just like, hey, I don't want to scare people off. Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to come on too strong and be too hard of a Bitcoin maxi and turn her off. But I wanted to open the door because, if the XRP thing goes south for her, and she at least knows that Heather's a nice Bitcoiner. I can talk to her and ask her questions.
Yeah, I think it's important for more Bitcoiners to share their shitcoining stories, because, when we put out there that hey, we went through the same narratives and the same things that we listen to all the influencers, and we, a lot of us watch the same YouTube channels and stuff that were pumping this information out. And then I think putting that out there is helpful, because it's sort of it solidifies that message that there's Bitcoin and there's everything else. And if we know we've gone through everything else, we have that experience to say hey, we were there. We know how you feel.
Yeah. It was I think I remember just wanting to understand it. And I think I started with trading books. I think I bought a stack of books that were Rich Dad, Poor Dad, trading books, and, just different finance books. And I was like, well, do I look into, crypto or Bitcoin? And What is Money had come out at I can't remember what year that was. That 2021, maybe, or maybe it was before that. And I actually got into like Max and Stacy back when they were on RT. And so I would watch Max and Stacy in the morning. I would watch like the PBD podcast because I was doing TV news, right? So I didn't have to be at work until the
Mm.
afternoon. So I would get up every morning and I would watch all these Bitcoin podcasts. I was starting, found Robert Breedlove, found all of these different, podcasts and kind of found Bitcoin Twitter and just started looking at places where people were talking about crypto and kind of the Bitcoin thing resonated with me for whatever reason. And I wish I could go back and look at how my train of thought worked. But I was following some crypto people who were talking about trading and yeah, it was stuff like Polkadot and Ripple.
Yeah.
It sounded kind of weird to me, but then when I started listening to the Bitcoiners, I was like, I think these are my people and not these
Yeah.
other like Polkadot people.
Yeah. Well,
What am I
like
gonna?
to me, like I never really got into the crypto stuff to like make a quick buck. Like, yeah, sure, I
Yeah.
got excited about, price run ups of some of these tokens. But the thing that really appealed to me was all these different use cases that they were trying to solve. The idea that you could like decentralize music and decentralize this
Yeah.
and that, and like, I don't know, like that all kind of sounded cool. And if that could catch on, it was like um, like that was the thing that drew me to these tokens. So like, I would just study the tokenomics and what developers are involved in this thing. And, it just got so exhausting after a while. And then once I don't know. And then once I land on all like what is money, it just brought so much peace,
That was it. That
tranquility.
was it. You bring up a good point, and that I think you're unique here because I think most people kind of find what we're doing with music by accident. They maybe find Fountain because Fountain's a great platform. I'm on Fountain; they're my host. If you're into Bitcoin, you're probably going to be drawn to Fountain. You're probably in a space that's going to lead you to Fountain, whether it's Nostr, Bitcoin, Twitter, your social network, your local Bitcoin meetup. You're probably going to get to Fountain and you're going to find some good Bitcoin, obviously, content on Fountain. And then maybe you discover the music too, and that you can send a boost or zap in the value verse to music that's, kind of, I don't know if open music is the right way to say it, but we've been calling it everything from V for V to value verse music. The point being that this is the alternative to the Spotify, to the Apple Music, to radio and record labels. You can get completely out of that system and get into a place where you're getting peer-to-peer payments in Bitcoin, right? And so like that, what I just said, that was a lot, right? That's a lot to explain to, somebody happens upon Radio Detox and is like, what is this about? She plays music. She talks about Bitcoin. She talks with Bitcoiners. We're highlighting community and culture here. And you actually went from decentralization to looking at what it could do for music because there are alternatives out there. I mean, over the years we've seen things come and go, and there's different apps, or there's NFTs, or there's Web3, or there's tokens, and there's all these things that that's not what we're doing here with Radio Detox or Fountain or Nostr. We're kind of the antithesis of that. But I've never heard somebody say before that they were specifically looking for decentralization and kind of found that and went to look for it in music. So I think you're kind of like the flip side of what most people do, where they just kind of happen upon us and they go, oh, that's cool. And then they go, well, how can I get involved? And it's either a musician going, hey, I can get on the Fountain app. I can put my music out on RSS, or I can put it out on Wavelake and Nostr, and I can join Nostr and I can post my videos. And then they start to go down the rabbit hole. But you didn't find this rabbit hole first. You were looking for the solution first because you understood the problem first.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The altcoin run up summer at the time, it led me to the idea that like we could decentralize things. But I think instead of decentralized things, with not all the things need their own token, because the token is the thing that matters, right? The
Yeah.
how you exchange value is the thing that matters. But ultimately, like these tokens are highly centralized. They're they had the pre ICO. It just didn't really, like, the idea was cool, but the implementation wasn't great.
Yeah.
And then you look, and then you come up on Bitcoin, and then it's like, wow, like this is real value. What if we just
Mm-hmm.
incorporated real value that you can zap anyone anywhere in the world in a split second into our music? Yeah, that's ultimately what made the most sense.
What drew you in? And so let's talk about Bitcoin District because,
Yeah,
you were the president of Bitcoin District. And
initiative.
did you Bitcoin District Initiative? Yeah.
It's a
I think
work
of it
ethic
mentally
thing.
as a Bitcoin so Bitcoin District Initiative is the nonprofit, correct?
Yeah, that's the formal nonprofit entity here. That's very new. Bitcoin District is the community of Bitcoiners, the Meetup here in DC. So that's been around well, way before I kind of jumped onto the scene here in DC. So there's a lot of really good Bitcoiners here. Sort of pioneered that the creation of that meetup. Shout out to all those folks that might be listening. So
Very cool. So
yeah, and then the
this is
initiative
obviously
came on later.
yeah, this is we're going to talk to everybody on Radio Detox this year. We're just getting started. It's only February. So okay, so Bitcoin District is the meetup. Bitcoin District Initiative is the nonprofit. I kind of want to talk about both. Meetups being extremely vital. That's how I've, met people here in Phoenix. I really got into the Noster meetup, which was very small and doesn't even happen anymore because everybody's lives kind of scattered.
Yeah,
But I moved back here a couple years ago from Wichita, Kansas, and there was no meetup in Wichita at the time. And I thought, I know I'm going to leave Wichita, so I don't want to be the one to start one and then bounce. But we really needed one, and now I hear there is one there now, which is great because I think we really need to meet other people in real life, and it's so cool to finally meet other people in real life after you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And it's also to have a meetup and then to have people come into it who have not met other Bitcoiners before. That's a cool feeling as well. So how did you get from, I guess, two separate things here? How did you get from doing Bitcoin meetups as an attendee to going, okay, we need this Bitcoin District initiative. Like we need to do this nonprofit
yeah,
where we help onboard people.
yeah. So my first, I guess, entry point into the local meetup scene, I think I went to a pizza day party. That was like my very first event, I think. So at that point, I had listened to so much of like the What Is Money podcast. I had started listening to things like TFTC. And then, eventually I just said, there's got to be more people here that I can go and hang out with and talk to. So did a quick search and found a local event. And I think my first like Bitcoin meetup event with the people that I consider some of my best friends here in DC today had Tally Lindbergh had came to DC with her free market kids, the game that her and her husband made. It was
Yeah,
called Huddle Up. So they came and did a meetup here where we all like got together and played that game, and that was
that's
cool. So I got
cool.
to meet people like Mauricio and Jesse and others here. And then and then from then on, I just kept showing up, and then a couple of years later, I'm wanting to do more stuff. I want to see more people come into the fold. I think Bitcoin meetups are amazing because you get to build those relationships with other people that, like we're also very different thinkers. And I think to be able to show up to a meetup and just connect with people on some level that you can't really, it's really hard to explain when you come to a meetup
Yeah.
and you know that like you know that this group of people is like there's some like baseline sort of I don't know how you would explain it, but there's some sort of like baseline thing. Like we get each other to some extent.
There's a
And
mindset, there's a
yeah,
value share, like, we're kind of like we're going in the same direction. We have, gone down the rabbit hole of study, whether it's podcasts, books,
yeah,
both, whatever. We want to find other people who think like us. And maybe it's a confirmation bias, but I think it's community building. And we're going, okay, once you get the bigger picture of this and realize, okay, we're kind of building a new world. We're kind of building an alternate lane to the world that we grew up in. And how am I going to I'm not going to do that alone.
yeah,
I've got to find other people to do that with me. And then you find people who aren't consumed by the current thing, as we say, or aren't consumed by reality TV and worried about Ks and just all the trappings of normie life, like fiat life, where you want, work for this big corporation and you're going to work till you retire in your 60s. It's just a very conventional life. And you start to meet, I guess we're kind of radical, right? Everybody sold everything. I did that once, right? And moved across the country with 9 bags and my 2 cats and, I still don't have that many chairs, Trey. I still, we kind of think different where we go, okay, we're willing to kind of disentangle from systems that we're
yeah.
familiar with.
And
And
it's a willing to like open your mind to a new way of thinking where we might have been we like before Bitcoin, we might have, had this very specific worldview, or, I know a lot of people who get into Bitcoin and they start to question, the narratives that they sort of have been fed,
Yeah.
or, whatever propaganda that, was, the algos are kind of thrown at you. But then once you find Bitcoin and you question what money is, like the foundation of like the way that every human transacts with each other, that really
Mhm.
starts to like, that's the thing that I needed to talk to other people about. And the
Yeah.
people who come to meetups they don't all think the same way. I think they have
True.
this desire to learn more, and that's the kind of commonality. But the people that I meet often here, like we think very differently, but we're also willing to challenge each other and, call each other out when maybe we're, leaning into a certain narrative, because I still feel like we're all
Yeah.
very vulnerable to all these narratives that get pushed. And,
Oh, yeah, we're getting
the
bombarded every
yeah,
day
we're being
with.
bombarded all the time. So like having a good solid group of people that get each other on that sort of Bitcoin willingness to learn more, we can like kind of sharpen each other too, like
Yeah, we hold each other
challenge
accountable.
ideas.
You know,
Yeah.
it's back to, like, what I said about the escape hatch is I was at a point where I was questioning things because it was the pandemic for me. Like, I'd become interested in Bitcoin in about 2018, didn't understand it, found one coworker who was like, "Yeah, I bought, like, or I made $1,000 or whatever," and it was like, and then I sold it, and and I was like, "Okay," so I bought some, and I went down 40%, and then I was bummed, and I didn't get it, and I didn't know where to turn for info. And then, like, a couple years later, fast forward to the pandemic, and I'm thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. I've said that so many times over the course of my life, and then, moved on to something better, whether it was leaving a corporate world and becoming an entrepreneur, or, in this case, Bitcoin. And I think there's a fundamental undercurrent that even if we think differently, we all know something's wrong. We all know something needs to change, and something it doesn't feel right. And it's kind of insulting to our intellect to think, in terms of, oh, the Federal Reserve is going to control everything and save everybody. And like that's a whole rabbit hole, right? But it's just kind of, I think we all kind of started questioning things, and that was where 2020 took me. It was like, I'm gonna start questioning everything, down to why do I live where I live? Why do I live in this country? Looked into my genealogy and went, because I don't think I'm
Yeah.
happy here. And then, like, I went down the rabbit hole of like nomad capitalist videos. Like, I would watch that guy every day and go, okay, like, where's the escape hatch? And I don't watch nomad capitalist anymore, but he's great. Don't get me wrong. But the escape hatch became, okay, Bitcoin kind of solves everything, no matter where I live, no matter what I do for a living, no matter how old I get, this is a sound money. And to explain to people that there's a sound money, they're like, what do you mean? Like normie people. So then that's kind of why we naturally seek out the people who are like, okay, I get it, sound money. And then we have sound music. And that, that's kind of what we do here at Radio Detox. We put it all together where it's implementing it into your life. And I think meetups are a way to implement Bitcoin into your life. And this is also something that you do
Yeah, for
very
sure.
well, Trey. So we're going to get into this now, what Bitcoin District Initiative does. I'm using the word implement. You can use your own language, obviously, and I think that you're going to put this better than me. Anyway, you're working on onboarding merchants. Like, you're just doing this like volunteer work.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of our big objectives this year. The sort of the timing of launching the initiative, it lined up really well with the Square rollout. I think that energized a lot of Bitcoiners to get out and hit the streets, find their favorite coffee shop, and that did the same thing for me for sure. But the initiative isn't just about onboarding merchants. It's about creating a circular economy here in DC. I think that's very important, but it's one thing to onboard a bunch of merchants, but that
Hmm.
doesn't really matter a whole lot if there's not a lot of people willing to pay with Bitcoin.
There you
So
go.
I think building community is extremely important, because that creates like the other half of that circular economy. And it's not just convincing people to pay with Bitcoin. It's about teaching people why it matters and why they should value transacting peer to peer with a business that
Yeah.
also values Bitcoin for the reasons that we all know, right? You could save in fees, instant settlement, no chargebacks, like all those things matter to a business. And,
Yeah.
ultimately, like people who start meetups, start community Bitcoin communities in their areas, like I think they ultimately care, like they want that value to stay local because it provides it makes your community better. It makes sure your
Yeah.
business is better, your people are happier. So it creates this like it's like this prosperity engine. So that's where the initiative
Ooh, I
is.
like
But
it.
I guess I'll back up, you know, prior to the merchant onboarding. I absolutely love Bitcoin meetups. I think they're great, but I also think that a lot of times Bitcoiners meet up with other Bitcoiners, and there's not a whole lot of outreach in the community to bring in like normie people to like
Yeah,
join
I
the
think you're
fold.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
how do we? That's what we start to question. Is like, how do we get out into our community? What's our message? How do we represent ourselves? Do I show up to, I don't know, a small business administration meeting or a local small business meetup and say, hey, I'm a random dude who loves Bitcoin. You guys should come
Yeah.
to a meetup. Or, or does having some sort of entity and more of a public presence, having more official capacity, I think it just opens up a lot more doors. There's the two-pronged approach for the initiative. It's educating merchants. Accepting Bitcoin is great. Ultimately, we want to bring them into the fold and continue their Bitcoin journey, help them on their Bitcoin journey. But it's also building the community and getting out, hitting the streets and finding new people to bring into our bubble.
Bring
And
them into the cause.
yeah, and that's the goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we're really just like kind of low key activists in a way that
Hmm.
we are working on just kind of creating this better world and this circular economy. I like your approach of like you're not just walking into a business and saying, "Hey, adopt Square, become a Square merchant, accept Bitcoin." You're providing more of a holistic approach. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the thing that I say when I talk to a merchant that says, "Hey, I'm my name's Trey. I'm part of the Bitcoin community here in DC. It's a growing meetup. There are people here who are willing to pay with Bitcoin and who will go out of their way to find your business and support you." I don't oversell it either. I don't say, "Hey, you should turn on
Yeah.
Bitcoin payments and save all of this money in fees," because that's just not reality. That only works if people are willing to transact in Bitcoin.
Right, you need Bitcoin payments, you need people spending their Bitcoin, I think is the
Right.
hardest part. There's such a HODL culture. Like, how do we get more people to kind of adopt this and spend their Bitcoin and seek out these merchants too?
Yeah, it's tough. And like right now, there's such a small group of people. Like, Bitcoiners are already a small group of people, but the ones who are willing to spend their Bitcoin is even smaller.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like really, really excited about, things like Cash App and Square, because, they understood that. And with Cash App, you can go to a merchant and spend Bitcoin without even having Bitcoin in your Cash App. So that's great. So we need more
That
tools
has
like.
That's been an interesting thing, like, because I've been spending my Bitcoin, right? I spend fiat, obviously. I try to live on a Bitcoin standard as much as possible, as much as serves me, right? Because, we know that the price goes up and down, so sometimes if you're converting to fiat, you're losing a little bit. So you kind of, when Bitcoin goes down, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm not going to spend money until we go back up. I kind of look at it like that. And so today, it's, as we're recording this, it's Thursday, February 12th. So I work for Wrigley and we're bringing back the block party tonight. And so usually I'll use Cash App or whatever wallet tops my mind, and I'll open it up and I'll buy hash rate real quick. And this was the first time I opened up Cash App today to buy some hash rate, just like I normally would. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a lightning payment and just get some hash rate, like $4, right? 7,000 sats worth of hash rate, and if we hit a block, it's a good return, right? I might make hundreds or a couple $1,000s, right? So I'm in. It's like I'm getting my lottery ticket, and I go to pay like I've always have for more than a year, and then Cash App was like, "Hey, do you want to really pay in your Bitcoin, or do you want to pay in your dollars?" And I was like, "Okay, Bitcoin's up today." Like, like the numbers are looking. I'm like, you know what? And I've never actually bought hash rate with dollars before. I was like, what the hell? We'll use some cash today instead of the Bitcoin,
Well,
and
you're
just
still using Bitcoin, which is the cool part. Like,
exactly.
even though
Okay,
you're
so I'm
not
paying with
spending
it.
your Bitcoin, you're
Yeah.
using Bitcoin.
So then
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is a different, refreshing use case for me today. That I'm buying into a Bitcoin mining party. I'm buying into our block party. making a Bitcoin Lightning payment, but I'm technically using my shitty fiat to do it. So if we hit a block today and I get, my share of the block rewarded, I did it with like $4.87 of shitty fiat. I'm going to talk about that forever. So thank you, Cash
Yeah.
App.
That's the beautiful part about like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is the asset, and the asset. Bitcoin is the asset, and the asset is the network. So you can use and spend it in ways that it's not so black and white all the time. So that's what
Yeah.
is
And
amazing about building
I,
tools on top of Bitcoin is you give people that option. And like to me,
yeah,
that option is really
choice.
just like a tax accounting
Yes.
hack. You're still paying with Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're paying with Bitcoin, because we obviously at Regularly we don't accept fiat. We do everything in Bitcoin. There's no
Yeah.
reason if we're selling hash rate. Why are we going to sell that? We're not going to take your dollars. That's a Bitcoin thing. People who understand Bitcoin are going to pay in Bitcoin, and if you don't understand this, you're not going to be interested in Bitcoin mining anyway. So it's good to have the choice. It's I've paid bills with Bitcoin. There was a time when I used to say, we'll have made it when I can pay for my auto insurance with Bitcoin. Okay, well, I don't know that we've made it yet, but I did pay for auto insurance with Bitcoin, right? So there are different ways to, I guess, use your Bitcoin, spend your Bitcoin, save your Bitcoin. We have plenty of tools now, plenty of different wallets and different financial products. But what kind of, I guess, would entice normal people to say, oh, let me, transact, I guess is the right word. Why should
Yeah.
I transact and
That is very
support?
challenging. That's a great question. Very challenging thing. I think there's a couple of very real things that a business can do. So once a business sort of understands the value of accepting Bitcoin, no or low fees, instant settlement, no chargebacks. Once they get that, and we start them on that journey, they're willing to put up a Bitcoin accepted here sign, which is more normies see it, and then it kind of makes them think, oh, this business likes Bitcoin. Maybe the next time I hear about it on the news, I'll take it a little more seriously.
Yeah.
So outside of that part, I think if once a business gets so far in their journey that they're willing to create an incentive for the customer to pay with Bitcoin,
Mhm.
that will be a big step. That doesn't happen on day one, but that'll be a big step. I'm sure you've heard of PubKey. You'll be here. You'll be
We
here
love
soon. I think in
we
March,
love
right?
PubKey. Yes,
We love
I'm
PubKey.
still, yeah, still looking forward to PubKey, March 15th, a little after party after the Runster District
Yeah.
K. We're going to head on over to PubKey and have some live music with Ainsley Costello, have some smash burgers, some drink specials. It's going to be a lot of fun. And this is actually what PubKey, since you bring them up, this is what they're famous for in New York and now DC, as PubKey is expanding, which we love to see, actually, because, it's not just a New York Bitcoin bar anymore. Now it's like a chain.
It's amazing, and they're accepting Bitcoin, but they offer a 21% discount
Perfect.
on everything, food, drinks, like everything, 21% off if you pay with Bitcoin. That's a huge incentive.
That is a huge
It's not
incentive. That's good.
10%, it's not 5, it's 21%.
It's
So
huge.
when I go and I order a smash burger and I want extra fries, and I have 2 or 3
Yeah.
beers, and then I get my check and I'm like, wait, that should be a lot more. It's that discount matters. So I never pay with a credit card at PubKey nowadays. They value Bitcoin. They want to
Uh-huh.
stack Bitcoin. Obviously, it's PubKey. They're well along their journey, with Bitcoin. They started out as like Bitcoin sort of in their DNA. For a normie sort of business to get to that point, it'll take some time.
Yeah.
The more that we support the business, I think that's a really good thing about having a local community and network of Bitcoiners, is that when you find like that really good local business, you can tap into that community and say, hey guys, I onboarded this honeybee stand at a farmer's market. Would you all like go out of your way maybe next time you're there and like pay with Bitcoin, go say hi.
It's kind
That's
of
powerful.
built for that small business. I've been a Square customer since, we're going to say, more than a decade. Because I had my own business in Wichita, Kansas. I was at a yoga studio, providing Reiki sessions, coaching, yoga, you name it. And I have said for, the entire time I've been a Bitcoiner, you can pay me in Bitcoin. And this is well before, I only had Square, right?
Yeah.
This is well before Square added the Bitcoin payments in November. And so I've said that for years. Not a single person has paid me for anything I've provided over the years, even when I had a brick and mortar space. Nobody has yet paid me in Bitcoin. I've always offered it. Even here in Phoenix, I had a space downtown where it was a great healing center. We did a kind of like a spring fling outdoor market event, and I had like 2 signs with 2 QR codes, like, I'm doing Reiki sessions today. You can pay me in dollars or you can pay me in Bitcoin. So there's like 2 different QR codes. And so like the dollars one was green, the Bitcoin one was orange, and it was like your choice. And, no one really asked, and nobody wanted to. Everybody, here it's Zelle, it's Venmo, it's all of these different products that are very, big company, big name. Not that Square isn't a big company and a big name, but these are the things that are popular. And so where I actually got the conversation going was I was playing music on a Bluetooth speaker through Wavelake, and people, we're hearing the music because, and I'm in a public space. I've got, we're outdoors. It's gorgeous here. It was like spring and people just walking around. And I ended up telling a guy about Wavelake. And it's like, you got like seconds to tell people about this stuff before you lose them, because there's jargon, there's tech, there's, big words, big ideas. And so I'm just showing this guy, I'm like, hey, I'm playing this song off of Wavelake. And look, I can zap this song. I can zap the artist. And they're going to get some Bitcoin from me. And it doesn't go through a bank and it doesn't go through an intermediary. I'm just paying for this song right now because I like it. Like, it's like I'm giving this person a quarter, right? And this guy was like, that is really cool, and so I'm like, okay. And this whole event, I put out my Bitcoin sign and my dollar sign, and you can pay me however you want. And there's choices here, and I've got Wavelake music playing, and like, I think I reached one person. It's just so one-to-one still right now. Do you have this same kind of experience as you're talking to merchants and also people who are willing to pay in Bitcoin?
Yeah, definitely. I follow up with every merchant that I help onboard because I want to know. I come back and ask them. I said, hey, since I was here last month, like, how many people offered to pay with Bitcoin? Many times it's none. Sometimes it was like, sometimes I'll get someone to go and support. That's kind of a known thing. But on occasion, they do say that, like, yeah, some random person showed up, saw the sign, and like, I don't know, whipped out their Coinbase app or some other app and like paid with Bitcoin. And they were like so stoked. That's the key too, is like when people see the sign and they already kind of know about Bitcoin and they don't really consider it. And maybe they're not like hardcore Bitcoiners or Bitcoin maxis, but maybe they have Coinbase and they have these other things. And when they see that Bitcoin sign, it's like an instant, like, oh crap, like this is something that isn't just, sitting in my Coinbase that I can trade or whatever. Like, it's something that this business, like, it's a real world interaction with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And they're like
Makes it
super
come to
stoked,
life.
and it does. And that's really the kind of the key with this merchant onboarding is even if the merchant doesn't really care about Bitcoin, but they're okay to go out of their way and cater to these other customers. Most businesses, want more ways to pay. If a customer wants to pay a certain way, they'll add the payment method, especially if it's as easy as with Square. So I think, what's even more powerful in this moment, and this is a low time preference effort here, right? We're not trying to like create a circular economy overnight. Like, that is not how this works. So very low time preference. But if we can start getting Bitcoin to be seen in DC, whether or not it's being used all the time, that is still progress. If we can get those Bitcoin accepted here signs in more places, that makes it real. Like, Bitcoin is in the real world. It's tangible. So it has a use case. Right now, I think it's just, a lot of people, especially here in DC, they think Bitcoin is just for rich people. They lump it in with crypto. They think it's a scam. But like, hey, this merchant at this local farmer's market that you go to every single week cares about Bitcoin. You already want to support that farmer. You're bringing your physical cash to support that farmer because they prefer cash.
It is that local angle, kind of like small business, local business kind of gets us away from that big centralization. And I've seen it in my own life where I become conscious of the centralization of how I spend my money more over time. Like, I've finally stopped going to gyms because it's almost impossible to find. And I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Okay. I'm in a city of 5 million people, market number 5, right? We're still growing because of TSMC and all of them. It's like $1 billion that TSMC is bringing in over time, right? So we're we're not going to stop at 5 million people, projecting that we reach up to 10 million people in this market over time, right? So this is not a small market by any means. And so we have a lot of businesses around here, but it is a lot of the coffee shops like Beal Beans, which actually started accepting Bitcoin at a farmer's market. Right. So it is, and it's, when I did have a brick and mortar business, I was able to accept Bitcoin. I think that we are kind of the ground floor. If you are selling honey at a farmer's market, or you're selling coffee at a farmer's market, or you're like me, provide a service where, you're renting a space or whatever, and you're able to interface directly with the public, that brings it to life. But it's also gets me out of always having to buy things at Target or Walmart or Aldi. I could buy, coffee from Beal Beans. I could buy coffee from another Bitcoiner. I could buy honey from another Bitcoiner. I could find a roadside stand. I know where there is one around here where somebody sells honey or sells oranges or sells sunglasses. And you see those guys on the corner with like the sunglasses and the blankets and the oranges, or they're selling flowers for Valentine's Day. Like, you see those guys and you're like, they could accept Bitcoin. And because you have a little more freedom as a small business too. And it's kind of just easier, I think, to adopt it as an idea, because you're an entrepreneur already. So you're already doing things different. And then you see the use case for it. I think it just kind of clicks in that space a lot better.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It does click. And I think these are really small businesses, these owner operated businesses, these hole in the wall spots. There's so many of those here in DC. And what's really sad is, like, I feel like for the past few years, each year it's projected that like 30+% of small businesses here will close down because, of a variety. Of course, like things like government shutdowns are like devastating for a business. Work from home stuff, that's not a DC specific thing, but that affects a lot of the, sort of government workers here for sure. And then things like this snowstorm that came through, like DC is still thawing. So we're still frozen. The foot traffic dropped drastically. So like when their margins are already so slim, and then you throw in these external sort of shocks that are very unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's very hard for these businesses. So if we can sort of help them understand Bitcoin, and it could be an option to help them weather those downturns in the future, then that's kind of the goal.
Is that kind of what you do? It's kind of like not just accepting Bitcoin payments. Like, you're obviously, like, when you're onboarding a merchant, that's kind of the key thing. But are you also encouraging them to hold back their Bitcoin and make sort of a strategic Bitcoin reserve for their small business?
Yeah, I don't encourage them really one way or the other, because I don't want them to, I don't want to like oversell something, because Bitcoin is very volatile, right? So, but the one thing that I do say is, I say that, hey, look, you're not going to get a lot of transactions in Bitcoin. If you get 1 or 2 a month, like, you could just stack that Bitcoin and keep it and not really have to worry about it. Like, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna hurt your business, right? If Bitcoin were to fall 50% tomorrow, like, oh, okay, those 2 burgers that you sold, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, it's not going to break you.
Yeah, and then I say, like, look, over time, if more people are willing to transact, and you want to keep you want to keep less of it in Bitcoin and convert some to dollars, like, you have that flexibility, especially with their Square merchant. It made it so easy to just move that slider, and you can do it that way. But we do provide some language. I've got some trifold pamphlets that do lay out the case for why a business would want to hold and store Bitcoin for the long term. But each business is very unique, very different. I don't try to push them to stack all your sales in Bitcoin, because I think that would be irresponsible. So it's really being sort of real and upfront, and say, hey, look, I think proving the use case that there are Bitcoiners here willing to transact with you in Bitcoin is like a good way to prove the use case of Bitcoin. And then the more that they learn and go down the rabbit hole, maybe they see those few transactions in their Square wallet. A year from now, maybe they'll see that those had doubled, tripled in value. That gets them to think more about Bitcoin.
More
then they can
long-term, for
reflect and say,
sure.
like, if I had converted 50% of my sales, or 10%, 5%, whatever it is, if I had converted a portion of my sales, when this guy came up to me and asked me to pay with Bitcoin, like, here's where I could be today. We also make sure that they understand that Bitcoin is pristine collateral. Like, you could get a loan in 10 seconds, like with Strike, you can get a loan and you can invest that in your business, grow your business. Like you have options. I think given that optionality message is very important. Like, I'll never give like advice on what they should do, but giving them the optionality and telling them that Bitcoin gives you optionality in the future is kind of the big message.
So Square began rolling out the Bitcoin payments on about November 10th of 2025. So now as we sit here, it's been a few months, right? It's Thursday, February 12th, 2026. So we've had a couple months now to work on this. Did you start right away with Bitcoin
Yeah,
District
right away.
Initiative? Right away. Okay, so you've been working at this whole time.
Program.
I hear that you probably hit a few merchants a day.
Not a few a day. That's a lot.
Okay.
There
That is a
were a
lot.
few days where I hit a few merchants a day.
Okay, so how many do you hit like a week? Like what's your average? Like how many are you hitting?
So it's very like bursty. So sometimes I will hit a farmer's market and then, it's it's almost rare that they'll turn it on the spot.
Yeah.
It's I talk to a lot of people. I show up consistently. I try not to badger them too much. I don't want them
Yeah.
to get annoyed with me. Sometimes I can kind of tell if I've,
Because you're kind of like a
that
sales guy, but you're not really like making
yeah.
money from these sales. So you're kind of like
Right,
a,
like,
I don't
I'm
know,
not trying to
mercenary.
sell you anything. I mean, like, I'm
Yeah.
selling an idea, but, like, that's it. I'm not trying to like, if anything, I'm trying to bring more business to you for, like, nothing in return. Just, like, put up a Bitcoin
Yeah.
sign and that's kind of it.
Doing the Lord's
But no,
work, Trey.
there's been weeks, especially, like, before it started getting super cold, there were weeks where I would help onboard, like, 2 or 3 merchants in a week. So that would be,
Okay.
like, the max.
That's pretty good though.
Recently, though, there's a restaurant. They started here as a food truck back in like 2013, 2014, like a long time ago. They had tried Bitcoin payments in their food truck back then. They're called
Cool.
the Peruvian Brothers. It's really good restaurant. Since then, they've opened up 4 or 5 different locations here in DC. We knew that they had sort of a history with Bitcoin. So we ended up following up with them and made sure they knew about the Square rollout of Bitcoin payments, and that was great. So we emailed them and then they said, yeah, we'll turn it on, and then we show up and we support and we give them all the signage and everything, and then now they're accepting Bitcoin. So that one was a
Very
cool one
cool.
because they had 5 different locations, so now they're all showing up on the Cash App map. Yeah, I would
Awesome.
say like on a good week, like 2 or 3.
Okay, so you hit 2 or 3, but do you manage to onboard 2 or 3?
On a good week, I've onboarded like 3 different merchants.
Okay, so that's okay. So
I'll
your
talk
goal
to
was,
dozens.
yeah,
I'll
talk to
talk
anybody
to
who's
and like
willing.
yeah, I'll talk to anybody who's willing. So like I'll like 2 or 3 days a week, I'll hit the ground in DC and I'll just scour different parts of the city and find merchants. Nowadays, I try to target the Square merchants because the onboarding is just so easy.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
that's a good idea.
if you can get like 1 or 2 merchants in a specific area to start accepting Bitcoin, then you can point, like if you can go to another business, point to
Yeah.
them and say like they're accepting Bitcoin.
And then you become a Bitcoin neighborhood where Bitcoiners
Exactly. Yeah.
know
And,
they can go to a
and the
certain,
case with the
yeah, I like that.
Peruvian brothers, it's in a like big food court called La Cosecha, and there's a lot of like Latin themed Latin restaurants in there. So like if I can get one to accept Bitcoin, put up the sign, then you can just walk around and like point to them and say, hey, they're accepting Bitcoin. And then they talk.
That's
So
good.
that's a good force amplifier. And then yeah, so that's kind of the goal. Farmers markets is another easy way to do that because a lot of the farmers market vendors, they all talk to each other, they're friends. So if you can get a couple there to do it, that helps a lot. So there's a lot of really good strategies for sure.
That is good. Okay, so your goal, I think, was to onboard 100 merchants.
Hmm.
That's going to take a
Yep.
while, though.
By the end of the year,
Okay.
we've got about 22 ish,
Okay,
22
so you're
separate businesses.
almost a quarter of the way there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got a
We're
soft
we're we're well on
approach.
the way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so like,
Yeah.
are you hitting the same ones over and over again? Like, if you get a no, you go back.
Yeah, definitely. And I won't go back right away. I give them some
Yeah.
time to think because a lot of these businesses, they're in the customer service industry and they want to treat their customers with respect. They want to be very pleasant and kind. So like even if they sometimes you can tell like even if they really don't want anything to do with Bitcoin, they'll kind of like they'll still be nice. They'll still talk to you. So I try to, kind of take a hint when I know it's just not going to work. But for the vast majority of the people I talk to, like, they're super receptive. I did a survey, me and my colleagues with the initiative, we put together a very, very easy survey. And the first couple questions were, what's the biggest challenges that you have running your business? And of course, the top answer was high fees.
Yeah.
The second question was, are you able to save in your business? Like, do you invest in any sort of assets that grow over time? And all of them said no, or they just reinvest back in their business. And then the third question we say is, have you ever heard of, or have you ever considered accepting Bitcoin in your business? So that was a cool strategy because we asked those questions that we knew they would kind of latch onto and really open up about because they all hate the
Yeah.
high fee. And
Right.
then
Hitting
we
the
bring
pain
in
points.
Bitcoin on the third and fourth questions, and then that helps really start a good conversation. So that was very helpful too. So I definitely circle back up with all those businesses, but it's fun. You get to meet a lot of cool people along the way, and I very much enjoy it.
Very cool. So now you're partnering, let's bring it back to PubKey in DC to build a Bitcoin education hub. So what does that kind of look like in practice? What happens when somebody walks in?
Walks into PubKey.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the day. Like, if someone walks into PubKey just on a random Tuesday, and they ask the bartender or something about Bitcoin, they'll say as much as they can. They'll say, "Hey, you can pay with Bitcoin. You get 21% off. You can just do it with Cash App." Kind of depends on who's at the bar. And I don't work for PubKey. I'm just kind of telling you my experience
Just a
there. But
fan.
yeah, huge fan. We are partnering with them to do some educational events on Wednesdays. Not every Wednesdays, but one or two Wednesdays out of the month. They'll always have Bitcoin free and open Bitcoin programming on Wednesdays here in DC. So that's just getting going, and they've partnered with us to organize some of those educational events. So we've done a few already. We're having one next week. It's called the Great Mid-Atlantic Bitcoin Meetup, which is a really fun idea one of our guys came up with. And we're inviting Bitcoiners, and specifically Bitcoin organizers from the region. So New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, someone's flying in from South Carolina for it. So it's a good way to bring everyone
Cool.
together and, network and stuff like that. But yeah, no, PubKey is amazing, and we're super happy to that they showed up, and we can do so much cool stuff there.
That's going to be an awesome meetup. That's on the 18th?
That is on the 18th, yes, February 18th, 6 p.m.
Okay.
It
Very
will be live stream.
cool. Live stream. Okay, where can we watch that?
Follow PubKey's channels, so their X, probably their YouTube. I think they're streaming on Nostr as well.
That is awesome. Yeah, I've found that streaming on Nostr can be a little subjective. It may or may not show up in Primal. It's going to probably show up on Fountain for sure. I've heard that when you try this, Zap.stream, of course, Amethyst should work, Nostr, Nostur, that app, probably works. So if you're expecting to see the stream on Nostr and you're not seeing it in the expected place, try Fountain. Try Amethyst if you have Android. You just keep bouncing. It's still an imperfect technology that we have going here, but yeah. And then PubKey, YouTube, PubKey, Twitter. That's always good, so people can watch what you guys are talking about live. I think that's an important component too.
And the event will be it's from 6 to 10, but there's a portion of it that'll be live stream. We'll have speakers, two different panels. We're going to talk about meetup organizers' experiences in their kind of talk about their meetups. And then what it's like to the importance of growing a Bitcoin community, and then give tips and tricks and recommendations for people who might want to start their own. So the goal there is to inspire more Bitcoiners out there to, if there's not a meetup in your town already, start one. And then we'll also talk about the merchant adoption piece.
Very cool.
Meetup exchange and why it's important, and tips to get out there and talk to merchants.
They're going to learn that's good stuff. Can people kind of I guess people outside of DC who are interested in what the Bitcoin District Initiative is doing, can they get in touch with you or maybe copy what you're doing or get some pointers? Because you're a great resource.
For sure. No, and I lean on a lot of other great resources. So, I consume all the, pay attention to all the really cool stuff coming out of other meetups, coming out of other companies. There's a group, there's a something called the Bitcoin Merchant Community that Spiral launched that puts out some really good resources that help Bitcoiners talk to merchants and sort of give them tips and stuff and print material. And they have these little plushies that they give out and to like
Yeah.
local Bitcoin champions. So they're really putting out some really good stuff. I've used that. I've used, pamphlets that, other folks have put out. I've customized them to sort of to the local Bitcoin or the local DC businesses. So, it's like, it's just I'm putting into practice what like a lot of other people out there have done, and then we produce some of our own stuff too. So it's really cool to be part of a movement where so many people just support each other and put out these free resources
Oh, yeah.
and encourage everyone to use and modify and stuff. So it's the whole open source spirit of it all is really cool. But yeah, we feel free to reach out, Trey at bitcoindistrictinitiative.org. You can go to bitcoindistrictinitiative.org. It's a very long domain name. bitcoindistrictinitiative.org. You'll see all of our initiatives there, contact info, and happy to meet and chat with others. If people want to like start a local nonprofit in their town to be able to do more things, like having a formal entity is like very helpful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So,
You have to pay
yeah,
for the
that
work
was
that
all
you're
very
doing
straightforward.
too. You gotta, I'm sure you have materials and, needing to pay for things. And therefore the
Yeah, yeah,
nonprofit structure makes sense.
having a budget is amazing. The budget we have is like peanuts. Having a
Right. But
budget is great when you want to print things and maybe book a venue for something, it's or like sell tickets to something like that. It helps a lot.
it's a good way. And lastly, I wanted to ask you what music you're a fan of in this quote unquote
Oh
value
man.
for value space or the Bitcoin music space, since we're still searching for the right name to give it, because nothing has caught on with mainstream people. They're not grabbing onto value for value or Bitcoin music or open music, unless they really are like yourself. You were looking specifically for ways to decentralize music, and you were looking for something around that. So I know you've got some music you like. Who are some of your favorite artists or songs or your favorite app to listen?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still a huge like Spotify person. I love the Spotify experience. But the thing that really drew me to decentralizing music was like, oh, well, like artists should be paid more for the music that they
Yes.
put out, and so that very much resonates with me. So like, I would love to see my favorite artist, kind of slide into the value for value sphere. But I love Ainsley, love her music. I first saw her in Nashville. That was my first Bitcoin conference. Like
Mm-hmm.
leading up to it, I had started to get into Wave Lake and I started listening to her new album. When she got really big on Wave Lake, her
Mm-hmm.
first few songs, that was really cool. So to like see her live, um, was awesome. I think I saw her live twice. I went to the Vinyl Lab and saw her play there. Were you at the Vinyl Lab?
Wasn't there? So that was the
Okay.
Bitcoin conference 2024 in Nashville.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. They had the bands at Bitcoin at the Vinyl Lounge, and it was 3 days straight of
yeah,
just performances, just as
yeah.
a side event to the
It
Bitcoin
was so
conference.
cool. Yeah, that side of it was so cool to see her in person. And then I saw her. I think there was another like concert there. Yeah. So like in terms of like the value for value world, Ainsley's great. And then just personally, like other music I listen to, like my music preferences that fluctuates wildly. But the type of music I that's my favorite that I always kind of like go back to often is there's a few bands. I love Mayday Parade. I don't know if you've heard them. It's
Mm-mm.
like a punk pop band. I love them. That was like my sort of childhood music growing up. Yellow Card is great. They just put
Mm-hmm.
out a new album, which is awesome. Honestly, I is a really good song that's like on repeat nowadays. And then I guess another artist would be Rainbow Kitten Surprise. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've heard of
No, I
them.
haven't heard of
That's
that one
another
at
good one.
all. It's always good when we talk about any music around here because, it's impossible to know all of it, whether it's in the Valueverse or not. So it's always good to
Yeah.
hear what people are into because it's like, you're into this, it's like Yellow Card, and you're like, but I love Ainsley, and I've seen Ainsley play live in
Yeah.
Nashville,
Well, like
which
I
is
grew up
great.
in Alabama, so like my dad was, huge into country. So like
Mm-hmm.
big country music fan, at least like the country music back then. I don't listen to a whole lot of the new stuff, but there's dad, and I would say like this like punk pop is good. I'm not into screamo. That's a little too much for my
Yeah.
ears.
It's a good point because I think we're still in a world where people are on legacy social media platforms like Twitter, and they're also getting into Nostr. And people are also like, hey, I am listening to Spotify or Apple Music or, the laundry list. There's like 10 of
Yeah.
them, right, that are mainstream and tied into record labels and performance rights organizations. But then there's also this alternative where you can get on Wavelake and you can get on Fountain and you can hear music where you can, if you love it, you can pay Ainsley Costello in Bitcoin with just a few sats here
Yeah.
and there, or you can stream on Fountain.
I love the streaming part. That's really
Yeah,
cool too.
that makes it easy, and I don't have to consciously like stop down, grab my phone, do the boost or the zap, and think and go through a thought process. It's like, oh, I'm listening to this song and I really like it, and the artist is just getting some money just because I'm listening to the song. I feel like that's the natural way. Like that's how it should work. Like because I'm listening to your song, you're getting paid for me listening to it. I feel like that's a more wholesome and proper way to be a music consumer. But, we do still have, the mainstream. We're not going to give up our Nirvana or our Fleetwood Mac, right? We're not going to give up Chapel Roan and all these big things that we listen to that are mainstream. And people may still, a few people probably still watch the Grammys and we go to concerts. Like I had Rustin Kelly tickets here in town. Show got canceled because it was Super Bowl Sunday, but I'm still going to enjoy some of my record label music, shall we say, mainstream music. And then I'm, gonna, take every opportunity to see Ainsley play or see Longy play or see Joe Martin play and listen to those songs as well. And, that's kind of where we're at right now, where we have the fiat system and people are taking fiat payments with Square, and people are also taking Bitcoin payments with Square. And it's just sort of becoming, I think, slowly but surely, as Parker Lewis says, gradually then suddenly, I don't know if things ever merge. Like, I don't think if we ever get rid of the old way completely, but like right now we're starting to kind of mesh and mingle the two together, we still.
It's really important to have options. And I think the more
Mhm.
that Bitcoiners create really good tools and options, when the time comes and people need another option, maybe it's gradually for a long time. And then, maybe there's some sort of event, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe the law is passed and now all these companies have to collect all this data on all our transactions. And like now people really do care about privacy. Like, hey, guess what? There's like an option.
Yeah, that's
Um,
it's like Discord just said that they're doing age verification, so everybody's going, oh gosh, we should have
Crazy.
had this ready for Nostr so we could have the Discord for. And it's not that people haven't tried to build it; it just isn't ready yet. And so it's
Yeah,
just one of
no,
those
it's
things
not. But
where
like keep building,
keep building.
you know. Yeah.
Keep at it. Well, thank you, Trey. Is there anything else that I asked you, or is there anything else I didn't ask you that we didn't cover that I should have asked you? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. If you hear this and you like what we're doing, you can go to givebdi.org. You can donate some sats or some dirty fiat. And if you want to see us do more of that stuff, a little bit goes a long way.
Awesome.
But I
Thank you, Trey,
appreciate
for
you
letting
having
me.
me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, letting me pick your brain and sharing some. You're just full of resources and great ideas, and you're a good soft sell on this sort of getting people into the Bitcoin world, which I think we were maxi orange pillars back in the day. I think we've rehabilitated ourselves to be a little to the easier, softer approach as far as getting people interested in this. That we don't sound like we're in a crazy cult. I think that's better. We're regular, normal people who just have adopted Bitcoin in our lives. It's not a cult. It's not a scheme. It's just we did the studying to figure out, okay, we want this better world, and now, oh gosh, we have to actually go work on it. And you're one of the people you're working on it. Your proof of work is getting merchants onboarded in Washington, D.C., and I commend you for that. I think it's important work. You're spending your time well, and you're spending your talent well, and just appreciate what you're doing, Trey.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Looking forward to the race, March 15th.
Good. Let's go Haynes Point. Sign up Runster, RUNSTR.club. That will sign you up for the run. And you're going to start to see posters all around DC soon talking about our after party at PubKey. So we'll be opening the doors at 10 in the morning. Ainsley's going to take the stage at noon for a great performance. So you got time to do the run or not do the run. But, we want you to get the full DC Bitcoin experience. Yeah, you can also walk the 5K, which I think a lot of people will do. But do your run. then after your run is over, you can hang out with the Bitcoiners at PubKey, get a great show, get a great burger, drink specials, and Trey will be there. And that's a great thing for you to go see Trey, pick his brain like I just did, and see if he can help you where you live, if you're outside of DC, or maybe you want to join Trey and start helping him try to onboard these businesses to Bitcoin. Let's do it. Thank you, Trey.